We're real excited to have this panel with us. We put this panel of practitioners together in order to give you a set of perspectives from education leaders in a variety of positions in organizations around the state. Like you, they are planning, innovating, reinventing how they work. So I'd like to first just run through, and they'll do a quick introduction with name, position, and tell you where they are in the state and how long they've been with their organization. So let's start, and we'll go alphabetically. So Manuel, can you come on and introduce yourself?
Yes, for sure. Hopefully everybody could hear me out there. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Manuel Bonilla. I am the president of the Fresno Teachers Association in Fresno, California, which is the Central Valley of California. Represent 4,200 members, 74,000 students in our district. And so this is entering my 10th year in education. It is my 4th active year in our association, and just finished my 2nd year as the president. So very excited to be here today and to join the virtual stage with all of my colleagues across the state.
Blanca?
Cavazos, and I am superintendent of the Taft Union High School District. We are actually south of Fresno in the Central Valley. It's a small school district of a little over 1,000 students, exclusively high school students. I've been in my role of superintendent for over 7 years now.
Thank you. And Lynn?
Hi, I'm Lynn Villarreal. I'm the CSEA president in Santa Clara Unified School District. We're in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've been the CSEA president. This is going on my 2nd year. I've worked for the school district, though, for over 25 years. And those 25 years, I very happily worked at one school site as a paraeducator. And I'm very happy to be here this afternoon.
Thank you. And Pam?
Hi, I'm Pam Costa. I'm a member of the San Juan Unified School District Board of Education. San Juan's a district of 40,000 preschool through adult students in the Sacramento suburban area. And I've been part of San Juan for 50 years as a student, a teacher, a principal, a director of schools, and now as a board member. And I'm really proud to be here today.
So 50 years, you're just getting to know the place, right? Thank you. And, also from San Juan, Shannon, could you introduce yourself? Shannon will join us in just a moment there.
Sorry about that. My name is Shannon Brown. I'm the executive director of the San Juan Teachers Association. I have the privilege of working with Pam Costa, attached to San Juan Unified. Our district is in Sacramento County and encompasses 5 unincorporated parts of Sacramento and 1 city. I have been the executive director for 3 years. Prior to that, I was president for 6 years. And prior to that, a classroom teacher for 12 years. So I have been attached to San Juan for a while.
Thanks, Shannon. And Roberto?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Roberto Nunez. I am Director of Leadership Development at the Monterey County Office of Education here on the Central Coast of California. I've been in this position for the last 2 years. Prior to this, I was a school site principal for 20 years. I've been involved with the California Labor Management Initiative doing this work over the past 5 years as I started getting involved in this work in my previous district. I'm just truly honored to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you. And also joining us in the background is Sid Harrow, one of our coaches, who will ask, he'll be monitoring chat, and so we'll ask for some questions from the audience that at the end of this will feed up to our panelists. So I want to start with an opening question here, and we'll just go kind of, again, alphabetically, so all of you have a chance to answer, and hopefully 30 seconds, right? When you think back over the past few months of the crisis, what comes to mind as a success or challenge in your leadership role? And then what stands out to you personally? Manuel?
30 seconds, right? So I think that both the success and the challenge was communication for me, making sure that there was accurate, timely communication. Everything was changing so quickly. From our date was March 13th, in which we closed, and so just making sure that we were communicating both as an organization with our school district, and then out to both our community and to our members. So some great successes with that, and some big challenges with that too. So communication.
Blanca?
For me, it was just being able to observe staff stepping out of their comfort zone and volunteering for responsibilities that they didn't have previously, that were outside of their job description. And people just said, "What do you need done? Tell me what you need done, and we'll help you get it done." And I think, just seeing our staff empowered to reimagine how to do routine tasks that uh, we couldn't do the same way as we've always done, and coming up with some new and innovative ways of doing that.
Thanks. And Lynn?
Yes, well, as president of the classified employees, we of course had a whole new role to take on. And so it was really challenging. We worked closely with the district to make sure, first of all, our food services were handing out our meals in a timely and in a safe and effective way. And we were also using people from other departments to ensure that that happened. That was a challenge, but also making sure that our employees were able to remain in paid status was huge for us. We worked very closely with the district to make sure everyone was still, even if they were at home, they were in paid status and they're all in safe and healthy environments. And that was really my biggest concern, and the biggest challenge that we had in the beginning was that, and like was mentioned earlier, the kind of shifting roles very quickly, communicating.
Thanks. What's your perspective?
For me, it was gratitude, absolute gratitude that we've had the long-standing relationship with our labor partners so that we could move quickly on behalf of our students. Before the last day of school, we already had a letter of agreement so that office hours would be in place so students could contact their teachers, or parents could contact teachers on the very first day that we were not having classes. Different than distance learning, a connection with a human being, and that makes all the difference in the world. Within 12 days, everything was up and running, and that again was thanks to our fantastic superintendent and senior staff and that partnership again that allowed us to get side letters of agreement so that distance learning was ready to go, and other unions had food services ready to go, and technology services had the technology to go. And I'd like to add on a personal note, I think this became real for me when one of our beloved teachers, retired teachers, passed away. And at that point, for me, it became every decision that we made, we had to consider the lives of our staff and our students.
Thanks, Pam. And Shannon?
Sure. I think the biggest success is not my own. It's watching 2,300 people, our members, move instantly, flexibly, willingly, as other people have mentioned, to something that they were not prepared to do. It is an absolute testament to the professionals that are in service to students every day. I am awed by the work that has been accomplished. As far as challenges, I would say the challenge then continues into now, which is people want answers. And as was mentioned earlier, people want communication. And unfortunately, we have about as much information as everyone else. We are trying to make decisions as fast as we can based on what the health experts are telling us is safe. And it's just hard because the variables continue to change, and we are having to create multiple sets of plans to be ready.
Thanks. And there's been some amazing, sort of on the fly activity out there. And, thank you for sort of recognizing how, people have gone above and beyond. Roberta?
Yeah, well, I'm in charge of leadership development here in our county. And I just think about when one goes through their training to become administrator, there isn't a training in the world that could have prepared any administrator in the business today on how to deal with a pandemic. Most of what we learn in the profession comes through trial and error. I'm just really super proud of how all our 24 districts have come together to share their resources, their ideas, their plans for moving forward, and just being open to suggestions for improvement. We have a meeting once a week for a good hour and a half, and all this transparency has filtered to all of the stakeholders within the agent of education. So I've seen over these past 3-4 months how union leadership is working really closely together with administration to be an important thought partner to create solutions in an expedient manner, and just doing right by kids. So that's sort of what over the last 3-4 months.
Thank you. And, I think you probably just answered one of the next questions here, which was, what kinds of issues have you all been using around collaborative problem solving? So, Roberta, do you want to just maybe give us one quick thing that emerged around collaborative problem solving that impressed you?
Yeah, sure. So ever since we've been shut down from going to our offices on March 16th, it didn't mean that business had to stop, right? Business still keeps going. So just being in charge of our county's administrator induction program, we were able to put together by all the second year folks were able to finish up their induction program and still be on track to clear their tier 1 administrative services credentials. A big problem occurred though in that the payment for the participation in the program, it usually gets paid by their district. But because of the situation, things kind of went a little haywire. So my administrative assistant and I utilized the virtual platform to meet with our business services a few weeks ago. And we were come with a collaborative agenda to meet with them just to get to the root of the problems. We were able to create a plan to clean it up. And more importantly, we were able to come away with a great system of improving upon what used to take place. And everyone up through our meeting that the system was improved. So just because we're in different times doesn't mean that there isn't great opportunity for systems to improve even better than they were.
Great. And Manuel, do you want to take a stab at?
Yeah, one of the key issues right off the bat was how are we going to continue what it is that we're all tasked to do, and that is quality instruction for our students. And luckily, we've built up a pretty collaborative relationship over the past year and a half. And I remember on the 14th, a Saturday, where we're all coming together, district leadership, union leadership, in regards to what type of a plan might we have moving forward. And we were able to share some documents back and forth, eventually landed on a distance learning plan. And although it wasn't perfect, it did really take in the humanity of the situation, right? 74,000 students that their circumstances at home would dictate that they might not have all the resources that we would want them to have in regards to technology, internet access, and all the other things that might hinder their quality of education. And so with that, learning how to collaboratively address the humanity of the situation, we came up with a plan called TLC, Teach, Learn, and Connect. And so that was great. That was just one example of how we were able to work collaboratively at the very beginning. And hopefully that is the foundation for, reopening the schools and all the other conversations that need to take place from here on out.
Thanks. Yeah, I've seen some amazing things. Another district, did a whole campaign around schools closed, hearts open. So we're running a little long here. I'm going to move to a question here for our board member, Pam. And Pam, how can school boards play a role in promoting labor management partnership, and how has your board played a role in setting the direction for reopening?
We have a long-standing history of labor collaboration in San Juan, and it's part of our culture now. So, first of all, when we hired a superintendent, that was our number one goal, to have a superintendent who also believed in collaboration. So that's one of the roles that a school board does with collaboration. We do it in our statements from the dais through policy decisions that are made. We have one-on-ones with our superintendent, and the conversations often revolve around the collaborative processes that are going on. Our superintendent's board goals and his evaluation reflect collaboration. And then it had conversations with our community and our staff and our parents, in conversations that say, when they start saying the union and we start saying our partner, it changes the whole tone of conversations. In terms of COVID and the board's role, obviously we have all conveyed the importance of following the health guidelines, and that is a message that every board member has given from the dais. We have listened to our community, to our staff members, to our superintendent. We've had conversations with our labor partners, and we continue to go back to the guidelines and what's best for our kids.
Thanks. And Blanca, did you want to weigh in on sort of the board? And you're in a situation where you haven't had decades of or even years of collaboration as a cultural norm. This is all very new for Taft. Do you want to speak to that, perhaps?
Yes, we've just been involved with LMI for the past year, and I think one of the things that the board has done and did recently, very, very vocally, was that they can be supportive. They can speak out and be supportive of those partnerships. And our board members, we have 2 board members that participate in our district learning team. And so they sit in with administrators and teachers and classified staff that are all looking at different issues for the district. Our board has also attended LMI training, and so they've become familiar and knowledgeable of the process. And so when any group is not following the process, if you will, doesn't have fidelity to the process, they are good to call it out and help everybody get back into that mode. And I think that's a critical role for us. As far as right now, our board members are very much involved in our reopening schools planning committee, and they're serving on subcommittees. And so at the end of the day, they are the ones that are going to weigh in on what model we implement in August, but they are very much hands-on, involved, knowledgeable.
Great, thank you. So when we think about sort of communication, you all brought up, when you talked earlier about communication. How have you communicated your labor management partnership to your own members and also to the community? And then how are you gathering input regarding reopening? Manuel, can you give us some insight? You've done some really interesting stuff with communication.
Right. Yeah. So we've been very vocal or out there in regards to the communication of this partnership. Last year, we did something that had never been done before. On a technical basis, we gathered all 106 principals throughout the district, and the superintendent and I led a conversation of what is professionalism, or what does it look like to be respected at your school site. So that was one thing, and that was more on the internal basis of the conversation. But since that time, particularly since schools have closed, we have done Facebook Live conversations to talk about the issues. In fact, we have one scheduled at 3 o'clock today. So we'll be talking about some issues of disagreement, right? So we'll be on there together live to talk about healthcare, reopening of schools, and it should be an interesting conversation. But just so that way people could see that you could have difficult conversations and still stay in the same space with each other. And then in regards to gathering information, I know that the district has put out their own survey, and then we put out a separate survey in regards to how or what people are thinking, and so we'll be sharing that information back and forth with each other as we start to plan for all interest in regards to safety, instruction, and all those things that everybody else is going through as we think about reopening schools.
Thank you, and it's been actually really fascinating. I've watched a couple of your sort of live stream recorded pieces with you and the superintendent. Pam, you had something you wanted to weigh in on this, and then I've got a question for Lynn next.
I talked about side letters. In terms of surveys, we've surveyed our parents. We did a thought exchange with parents, students, community members, and staff to find out their thinking around reopening schools. I think the most interesting thing that's happened in terms of communication and feedback came following George Floyd's murder. And the superintendent posted a message to parents and staff addressing racism and institutional racism, and called for a virtual listening circle to occur so that community members, students, staff, and parents could have conversations with each other virtually. And we did 4 conversations within 4 days of the superintendent's message. This was followed up by another 2 conversations with staff, followed up by several listening circles with students, and from that, a call to action for our community and our staff. And I think this will affect as we reopen schools in a dramatic way.
Thank you. And Lynn, when I think, of sort of a typical dynamic in school systems, oftentimes classified staff are told how to do things as opposed to being invited into, this developing solutions to problems. How are you working to empower classified staff, and what are you seeing in your district around that effort?
Well, what was beneficial to us is that we have involved in this work for 6 years now, and so we were already used to kind of communicating and collaborating back and forth. But during this time in particular, the district has set up many different committees and subgroups and subcommittees that are looking at all the different aspects of what school is going to look like when we do reopen, however, coming up with the different scenarios. And we've made sure by working closely with the superintendent and the teachers union that we have representation on all these subcommittees, that our members are reached out to and asked. I just sat last week with a group of paraeducators coming up with ideas of they said anything that you can come up with, we're going to throw it on the wall and see what sticks. And our members have been deeply committed and involved. We're even looking at ways that we can step outside of our comfort zones of what we usually do in our roles. But I'm encouraging them to be willing to be open to learning new things and helping the district in other ways, because I really do believe that as part of a partnership, we are all in this together. And I'm encouraging my members to look at it the same way.
And anyone else want to weigh in on the classified staff connections? And
I will, Ed. In our district, we encouraged our classified staff to form their own professional learning teams, and then have representatives meet and problem solve together, bring up issues together, and then they also have representation on our school learning teams. And so as far as sites are concerned, they have a voice there, and equal representation, and then also district learning team. And so there are just multiple areas where they have input and they weigh in like everyone else, and are respected just like anyone else on the team. And so I think for us, it was creating the structure, and then when we became frustrated that sometimes we weren't getting the input that we needed, looking for how do we strengthen those professional learning teams, how do we foster them and help them and learn how to work within those teams.
Thank you. So I think this next issue is kind of huge and on everyone's mind, and that's in relation to how we're supporting students and staff's socio-emotional needs when they return. Shannon, I know you earlier in a conversation we had mentioned a pretty interesting sort of concept around how you're looking at kind of essential standards and ways to create the space within the school day and time for really dealing with socio-emotional supports. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Teachers can tell you that even in normal times, it's pretty difficult to cover all of the standards that we're expected to cover. And during these times, it's impossible. So one of the agreements we had early on with the district in thinking about the pivot to next year, that we need to have a more intensive focus to allow ourselves, our teachers, to go deeper around the power standards. So we have teams of labor and management looking at grade level and content standards to identify what will be lifted up as the essential standards guidelines. Then we had, to the side letters that Pam mentioned, we created a side letter that created an opportunity for summer work for instructional staff. And they were allowed to apply to create lessons, online lessons, that are in alignment to these essential standards by grade level and by content. We had joint labor management teams doing the screening of these. And the goal is, by having these lessons and by having the essential standards identified, that it will free up time for when the teacher is in person with students to be able to spend more time on relationship building and on whatever the school's social emotional learning program might be, or whatever their approach might be. We knew we needed to give some support around the idea that academics is critically important and will continue to be, but relationship building needs to be prioritized during this time.
Thank you. Manuel, you had some thoughts on this?
Boy, I just want to thank Shannon. It's very inspiring to hear, and as a goal, I know that San Juan has been doing some of this collaborative work for many years now, and so I see this as a goal to get to. I don't think I could offer much more in regards to this. I know that we're in the beginning stages of the planning process for next year, knowing that both staff and student social emotional needs is going to be huge. Not just going into the year, but throughout the year. And so it's an obvious concern, but it's just inspiring to hear some more concrete ideas that are already out there. So thank you, Shannon, for sharing.
Anyone else on the issues around socio-emotional learning for students and staff?
Yeah, I'll share, Ed. Within my department, we're also working very closely with our school counselors throughout our county. We have a college and career, section within the work that we do. But I can't ever remember a time in my 27 years in education where there has been an immense need for counselors, like the situation that we currently find ourselves. In talking to counselors over these past 3 months, they've been doing an amazing job within their districts, helping their students, parents, and staff all keep it together. We have to come to the realization that when we go back to school in the fall, American schooling will not be the same as we knew it. So counselors will definitely be counted upon to lead the social emotional support work, because that's pretty much a major aspect with what they've been trained to do. So for our office, we've already developed a series of different professional development trainings for our counselors over the next course of the year, especially as it pertains to supporting the social and emotional needs for not just students and staff, but parents as well. So this will probably mostly all be done virtually, but it'll be done free of charge because we partnered with our key community resources to just be together. So that's just another aspect, tapping into our local community resources to continue the village raising all the children.
Thank you. Shannon, you had a quick comment too as well?
Yeah, so I just actually wanted to build on that this cannot just be about teachers trying to do this. This does need to be the entire educational community. And so one of the things that we've talked about is each school site was tracking which students did not participate at all, or maybe as much as we would have thought in distance learning. And so upon arrival on campus, which we hope will happen to some degree, there will be wraparound services. We have social workers, counselors, additional support staff that will be deployed immediately to reach out to to students and families to figure out what it is we can do, what happened during this time, and how we can continue to support them. So I just want to echo that this cannot just be left to instructional staff to tend to the emotional needs of students during this time.
Yeah, and when you think about sort of all that's gone on, just the huge amount of sort of stress that our colleagues have been under, that your families and students have been under. I'm thinking about sort of how we create that system that creates support when kids finally get back to school and what that looks like. I'm wondering for all of our panelists, maybe we'll just go through the group here. What advice do you have for education leaders across the state as they consider reopening? And what have you? Manuel?
Yeah, I mean, every school district is going to obviously have their own needs to whatever the community needs are. But the thing that I would say as a piece of advice is your school board or your district senior leadership, you obviously have a point of view. You have to take a look at the whole picture, but make sure that you're talking to the people that are going to be implementing the plan, and do it early on. You need to have their vantage point as well. And then the people that are implementing it, that you have a small viewpoint. It might just be your classroom, it might be your campus, and know that there's also a global view as well, right? And so just get into space and communicate. It does not hurt to have people in the designing process in early, as opposed to cooking the stew and then bringing it to somebody and saying, is this good enough? That's not partnership, right? That's just a rubber stamp. So get into space early, talk early, and really flesh out the needs and interests of everybody involved.
That's great. Thank you. Blanca?
My advice is get your stakeholders involved in the process, and I agree with get them in there early. Be transparent with what the obstacles are, what resources you have available. I mean, we have a number of documents that we're using for guidance, providing them that guidance, the information that you have, and it will be messy. It is going to be messy because everyone has their own point of view, and some people come in with a very strong agenda. But at the end of the day, you will have a vetted process, if you will, and a vetted product. If, as was mentioned, the people that are going to carry it out, if they had an opportunity to be involved in designing it and in looking at the buts. Oh, that's a great idea, but and we even have a group that's their job, is to be the devil's advocate and be the buts for us, so that we don't put it out there and then the community as a whole or other groups come in and attack us. Let's do that with people that love us and not people that are out to get us. And so getting them involved early in the process, and then being transparent, because when people know what you're up against, what you're trying to design, and really looking at the bottom line is we want a safe environment for our students and staff to come back to. And we want to provide instruction in that safe environment, as safe as we can make it. If we can all agree on that and then move from that, we'll be good. So involve your stakeholders.
Thank you. And Lynn, when you think about what advice you'd give folks around the state, what comes to mind? What have you learned? I think you might be on mute there. There you go.
what the people before me said is absolutely true, and I agree. Get your stakeholders involved, transparency, communicate, communicate, communicate. But I also feel strongly that we all need to step back, take a breath, and give each other grace. We're going through some difficult times, and maybe we might be a little panicked. We may be surrounded by people who are starting to maybe get in panic mode, but if we can all just step back and give each other that space to operate at their best level, then I think that serves not just us well, but it serves our communities, and most importantly, it serves our students well. If we're all working on this together in a very deliberate and collaborative and just a calm vision, looking forward to the future kind of perspective.
Thanks. Pam.
I agree with all of the above. What I know for sure is there are 52 days until we open school. And when I think back about all the twists and turns we've encountered over 101 days since we closed, I've learned that my personal need for detailed planning is great in normal times, but it takes being nimble, flexible, creative, and having lots of partners to steer us together to safety through the COVID drama.
Great. Shannon.
Sure. So same with everyone else, I agree with everything that's been said. So I'm going to actually give a very detailed piece of advice that I think people should be considering. During this time, one of the things that I'm not sure is on people's radar that needs to be is what are the barriers that might keep staff from returning to work. So we have elevated two. One is staff that are themselves medically compromised or in the high-risk group, or who are the primary care providers for people who are in the high-risk group, as well as people who might have childcare issues if schools do reopen in a hybrid model. So if you're not working together to address those issues, then reopening of schools, if that is anything anyone is talking about doing in person, is going to be a big August surprise. So I would encourage people to dig in and start looking at the realities of what staff is facing that might be a barrier for them to returning to work.
Thank you. And, we can make available, I know, Shannon, you sent us some of the side letters that you've developed in San Juan. Maybe we can make those available to everyone to just take a look at as an example of what one district's doing specific to that very issue. Roberto.
Well, so hard on a question like this to go last because everyone's pretty much covered it. But I'll just take advantage and get on a soapbox if I may. I briefly mentioned prior to this that we have to understand that when American schooling resumes in the fall, it's not going to be the same. If anyone's been paying close attention to the pandemic trends lately, now more states have been relaxing their shelter and stay orders, and the contamination numbers are starting to rise again, especially here out west. So my sense tells me that we're experiencing a second wave, and we're probably headed back towards shelter and stay orders. That means at best we'll be looking at a hybrid model of schooling. You heard my other colleagues sharing that insight already, but with this pandemic, I see a golden opportunity for the educational community to take advantage as we are planning for the reopening of schools. We should be looking through a lens of innovation in terms of finally creating a schooling system that truly serves all students. Before this pandemic hit, we have to be honest with ourselves. The schooling system wasn't serving and wasn't created for all students. So I'll give you an example. At risk, you heard Shannon mention a great idea of what they're doing. At risk now takes on a new definition. For me, at-risk students are those students that completely stop their learning once the March shelter and stay orders hit for whatever reason, be it no access to technology or internet, whatever it was. Maybe those are the scholars that we look at bringing back first because maybe the brick and mortar situation works best for them. You might not even have a choice anyway. As one of the polls I saw, 4 out of every 10 parents feel like they won't be sending their kids back to school because they still feel that it's unsafe. So we still have to educate all our students, no matter who is at risk. So My point is this, basically. Shame on us if we allow ourselves to go back to the system that truly wasn't working for all students. We have a golden opportunity to do something about that once and for all, and I call that true leadership.
Thanks, Roberto. I think this is a real unique moment in time, and we really do have opportunities, that present themselves that we just didn't have before. Obviously, this wasn't necessarily the way we wanted to get all those opportunities, but we also need to make sure we capture and seize the moment. So I think we have time for, maybe a question from the audience. I know that, there's a lot of folks out there. We have over 500 people here, and but Sid, you have something that you want to raise up for people to answer, and we'll close it out here. Sid, I think you're on. Sid's on mute, but he's going to come on momentarily.
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
Sure thing. As I've been listening to some of the information and programs and initiatives that have been shared by our panel participants, there are a couple of things I think might be helpful to hear a little bit more about. One is, I'm wondering about any specific actions that your district has taken to actually hear and listen to stakeholders. We've heard a lot about hearing from them, but what was done to effectively do that, accomplish that?
Anyone want to jump in? I know there's been a lot of surveys and things that.
I can give two examples. One, well, both of them are in development. One, because of the barriers that we know staff will face. As you mentioned, Ed, we do have a side letter that creates a voluntary transfer option for staff to be able to apply for distance learning positions, because as mentioned by other panelists, some families are going to choose not to send their students back to school. So we're going to have some needs there. So we feel like we can both meet the needs of our members who are medically compromised, as well as the needs of families by creating these positions. So to me, that's an example of listening to two sides of the system and coming up with some creative options that we think are going to meet needs.
Great.
That would be helpful. And hearing a little bit more about is, we've heard about different types and the importance of communication. What might be some of the vehicles that our panel members have used to actually conduct that communication?
I can speak to that a little bit. We've sent out, I and the Teachers Union President and our superintendent have sent out joint communications. We have several, our district has many different social platforms that we use. Speaking as union leaders, the Teachers Union President and myself, we reach out to our members ourselves with all the information that we're sharing, as well as our superintendent shares weekly updates to staff and the community. We have a lot of different ways, but we're always looking for more and more efficient ways to reach out and communicate with people, because you can't really over communicate. You just have to keep putting it out there in different ways and with different voices and in different venues.
And do we have one last person that might want to answer that question before we close out?
We use just about everything. We use social media. We use the robocalls. We do email. We've done just and texts. We send out texts to parents. We've recorded video and sent that out in their preferred format. We've done everything that we can think of in order to get communication out, and I think that's served us very, very well during the time that we've been closed.
Thank you. I really want to extend my appreciation to all of the amazing work that our panelists have been doing, the work that they've put in locally in their communities, with their state associations, with their locals. And this work is incredibly challenging. I think, as Simon Breakspear talked about, we are just innovating, continuously. I've seen, just particularly for labor management teams, is generating, sort of side letters, MOUs, ways of problem solving, sometimes informal. It's just a continuous process. So it's just been encouraging to see all of that happening around the state. A big thank you to all of you. We'll make more materials available to people. We'll try and also get some sample parent and staff communication surveys and other things out to make available to folks. And again, thank you so much for all of your insight, your time, and really appreciate you joining us here.